Welcome, Miss Enterprises, to Sensual Readings with Zach Connor. Today, I will be reading the book Betrayed by Patrice Smith. As you've seen in the intro, I've already lit some candles in order to help accentuate the mood. Except I can't freaking read this book in the dark, so I'm gonna have to turn the lights on a little bit more. But once I do that, we'll get started. I'm going to be reading a sensual scene on page 57 between the characters Angus Gordon and Fiona. Yes, Angus Gordon appears to be some Scottish man and Fiona is his new mistress or something. I don't know. I don't read these books. Thank you to the person who does read these books, Angie Craig. Thank you for lending this to me, though. Let's get started. Could a man be called beautiful? Fiona wondered. His limbs were long and straight, and pleasingly curved where they should be. He had nicely shaped buttocks, round, yet firm. He turned back to her, slipping again into the bed. Fiona glimpsed his male appendage, pale and bobbing from a nest of curls as dark as her own. He saw where her glance had fastened itself. "Are you afeard again, lassie?" he asked her in a quiet voice. "You don't have to be afraid of it, you know. He's a braw fellow, my Gordy is, and he will give you much pleasure once you become acquainted with ye." To his utter amazement, Fiona had reached out and touched his manhood, her face thoughtful as well as curious. He flinched with surprise, and she said in a serious voice, "Does it hurt when I touch it?" "No." "Then why did you start?" "I would not have thought a virgin so curious." "Do virgins usually quail at the sight of your Gordy, then?" Her fingers slid along his length, and he swallowed hard. "I don't recall," he muttered. He felt as hard as iron and near to bursting beneath her gentle yet bestirring touch. Her boldness was confusing him. It wasn't that he wanted her shrieking and swooning with fear. But should not a virgin be more respectful of his male member? Just a few moments ago she had fainted at his touch, and now here she was boldly stroking him with fingers as skilled as any whore's. He would have remonstrated with her, but he could see her actions were actually born of curiosity, and the fact that she did not truly know how a respectable lass should behave in such a situation. His fingers closed tightly around her wrist. I apologize. "Enough, lassie! Your touch axe sets me afire with lust!" He pulled her back into the pillows, kissing her hard again. Fiona pulled her head away. "Show me where it goes," she demanded of him. "Jesus Christus!" Angus exploded. "Is there not any delicacy in ye, lassie? What kind of thing is that to ask a man?" "I don't like the uncertainty," Fiona told him. "You kiss me and you caress me till I can bear it no longer. Will you not take my maidenhood and be done with it, my lord?" She was afraid. He realized it in that brief moment. But of course she would deny it and claim once again that she was not craven. He moved his body so that it was partially covering hers. His hand gently touched her cheek. "When a man makes love with a woman, lassie," he began, "it should not be a quick coupling. There is little pleasure in quick coupling, particularly the first time. It should be slow and hot and very sweet between them." His lips brushed her lips and then her purpled eyelids. His hand plunged into the mass of her dark hair, taking a fistful of it up, inhaling the clean fragrance of it against his nose. Fiona shifted nervously like a mare newly brought to the harness. Why did his voice sound so intense? Why did her breasts ache and her nipples feel so irritated against his smooth chest? His presence was suddenly very overwhelming. She bit her lip in her effort not to cry out. Her eyes closed as if in doing so she could shut all this out. The very scent of his masculinity assailed her nostrils. It was a powerful and exciting fragrance that seemed to call up to something equally primitive within her. Her hands moved slowly over his shoulders. He kissed her again, but this time he gently forced her lips open and pushed his tongue past her teeth to find her tongue. Fiona shivered violently as their tongues touched, sleeking back and forth, intertwining in an amorous first mating. She sighed and arched her body, pressing it more tightly into his. 'Tis nice," she murmured against his mouth. "Ah," she sighed as she broke off the kiss. His lips spreading kisses across her smooth chest and down to cover her breasts. Her belly contracted almost painfully as his mouth fastened itself over her nipple, tongue teasing tenderly, lips drawing softly over her flesh. "Oh," she half moaned. "Oh!" His fingers were teasing the curls on her venous mons, pushing her nether lips. "This is where it will go, lassie," he told her, raising his head from her sweet young breasts. Gently, a single digit invaded her now trembling body, pushing itself carefully into a place she had not until just a moment ago even known existed. Reaching the barrier of her maidenhead, she stopped, withdrawing the fingers slowly. Fiona's eyes were wide with a mixture of shock, surprise, and a budding desire. "Your Gordy's too braw a fellow to go where ye just went with your wicked finger," she told him. "Nay, lassie," he assured her. Your wee slit will open yourself wide so my Gordy may forage in your honeypot for its sweetness." His dark head moved down her torso, spreading kisses as it went. Once again his fingers slipped through her nether lips, this time touching her in another place she hadn't before known. "'Tis your sugar button," he told her, teasing at the small fleshy nub. Fiona's head whirled with shock as a wave of delight passed over her entire body, rendering it weak with her pleasure. How was a finger capable of giving such enjoyment? "Don't stop," she begged him. A burst of stars exploded behind her eyelids. "Oh, she was suddenly weak from gratification. "So you like that, do you?" he murmured low, as he swung himself over her slender frame. He spread her thighs with firm hands, and then, while he was still in the throes of dawning awareness, he grasped his manhood, positioned it, and leaning forward over her, pushed firmly into her body. She opened for him like a fragrant flower, encasing inch by inch within her velvet sheath. Angus Gordon groaned with anticipation. She felt it. It pressed relentlessly into her, thick and hot, driving deep. Fiona had never imagined such an invasion of herself. Instinctively, she stiffened. No, lassie," he whispered hotly in her ear. "Don't fight me now. Ah, you're sweet, sweet." He pushed onward, finally meeting with the barrier between Fiona Hayes' girlhood and womanhood. Swiftly he crossed it, thrusting as far as he could, then resting. She felt a sharp sting of pain that spread down to her thighs and up into her chest, rendering her breathless for a long moment, and then the burning melted away. Fiona gasped, drawing a great draught of air into her lungs, which she almost immediately expelled. "Does it hurt all the time?" she managed to ask, finding it impossible to understand why anyone would enjoy this if it did. There was almost a pained expression in his eyes. "No, lassie," he whispered against her lips, was kissing her softly. He began to move upon her, pinioning her lightly, as his hands pressing down upon her wrists on either side of her head. With an almost primitive instinct, she began to move in rhythm with him. He stared down into her face, amazed at the savage beauty of it, as she began to experience passion. He was surprised that despite her inexperience, he was finding great pleasure in coupling with this girl. The tightness in his groin was building and building. The pain gone, Fiona closed her eyes again. The deed was done and her virginity shattered. There had been nothing to be afraid of, and she began to relax, joining him in the erotic cadence he created. She broke his light grip and put her arms around him, drawing him closer to her. The stars were beginning to sparkle behind her eyelids again, and a feeling of growing exhilaration began to fill her entire being. She cried out, and his mouth descended fiercely upon hers, intensifying her euphoria. She could feel him, hard and demanding within her. Her nails dug into his shoulders. Ah, she sobbed, and then she sensed the impending burst of his lust as his juices flooded her, mingling with her virgin's blood. In that instant Fiona soared, her heart beating wildly, clinging to him. It was wonderful. She drifted mindlessly for what seemed several minutes, aware of the ragged breathing, aware that their bodies felt hot and wet, and that they were still intertwined. Finally he withdrew from her, lifting himself off her body, his big hand tenderly smoothing the tangle of hair from her face. Fiona opened her eyes and looked up into his face. "You are very braw, lassie," he told her in a small smile. She smiled back. "You're satisfied, then, that I was indeed a virgin, and my debt is paid to you, my lord?" Fiona said mischievously. "You were a virgin, lassie," he agreed. "But ye have just begun to pay your debt to me. Have I not warned ye that 20 head of cattle was very expensive? You're a brazen little thief, Fiona Hay, and I'll have my full measure of ye. I'll give ye and your sisters your living free. For that I owe ye to your grandsire, but the cattle are another matter." "You're a hard man," Fiona said softly. "Jason," he swore softly. "Is there no end to your wiles, lassie? You're flirting with me." "I don't have any knowledge about being a man's mistress," he answered imperatively. "Is a mistress not permitted to flirt with her lord, at least in the privacy of their chamber?" Her dark eyelashes flirted at him wickedly, and her mouth was suddenly very pouty. "I don't know the rules of the game we play, my little self, lassie," he responded with a chuckle. "I have never kept a mistress." Betrayed by Patrice Small, you should read it.